Dear students, as I told you in the last class, equilibrium rate of interest is affected by changes in the money supply and also changes in the demand for money. First, we consider what happens to equilibrium level of interest as the supply of money increases. Suppose that with the aim of reducing the interest rate, Central Bank of the country increases money supply. Now initially the equilibrium was like this. Money supply was 100, equilibrium at 8%. Money supply was 100, equilibrium, that is equality between supply of money and demand for money, occurred at 8%. At 8%. Now suppose that Central Bank of the country increases the money supply from 100 to 110. Is shown by a vertical shift, 110. MS is 110. Now the question arises is how the Central Bank of the country is able to increase the supply of money. Now the policies adopted by the central bank to increase or decrease the supply of money in the economy is known as monetary policy. There are various instruments of monetary policy. One is open market operations, then a change in the cash reserve ratio of the commercial banks that we have discussed. Now we assume that central bank increases the money supply by what is known as open market operations. Open market operations means the sale and purchase of bonds by the central bank in the open market. Bond holders are the public. Now suppose that central bank plans to increase the supply of money, then central bank will enter the market and purchase bonds. But remember this, central bank will be able to purchase bonds if and only if the central bank offers a high price for the bond. So if the central bank is ready to offer a high price for the bond, bond holders will be willing to substitute bond for money. This is because as the price of bond, when the central bank enters the market to purchase bonds, the demand for bonds increases relative to the supply of bonds. So price of bond will increase and rate of interest will decrease, say from 8% to 6%. We can interpret this in two ways. Central bank can offer a high price for bonds and it reduces the interest rate. Or we can say that in a competitive economy, when the central bank enters the market to purchase bonds, the demand for bonds increases relative to the supply of bonds, so that the price of bonds will increase and it reduces the rate of interest, because we have discussed earlier that there is an inverse relationship between the price of bonds and the interest rate. If the money supply again increases from 110 to say 120, interest rate again decreases to say 4%. So keeping all the other factors constant, that is demand for money is constant, an increase in the supply of money, level of income is also held constant, reduces what is known as the rate of interest. So if the objective of the central bank is to reduce the interest rates to stimulate investment, income, etc., then it will increase the supply of money by purchasing bonds known as open market operations. But as you can see, an increase in the supply of money beyond a point will not reduce the interest rate. If the supply of money becomes 120, what is the impact of further increases in money supply? Further increases in money supply to 130, 140, etc. leave the interest rate unchanged at 4%. And this, when this point is reached, we say that the economy is in what is known as liquidity drop. That is, the interest rate is very low already. It is not possible to reduce the interest rate further by a reduction in the, an increase in the supply of money. That point is known as liquidity drop. Let me give a formal definition to liquidity drop. There may be some relatively low rate at which the demand curve for money becomes perfectly elastic, indicating that virtually all wealth holders believe that interest rate is low, that it can go no lower, and security prices so high that it can go no higher. That is the point of very high security prices and very low interest rates, or that is a level of interest rate which wealth holders believe that interest rate will not go down further. This point is known as liquidity drop. If the economy is experiencing such a low rate of interest, liquidity drop, it is clear that monetary policy become ineffective. In the Western countries, including Japan, interest rate is very low, at 2%, 1%, etc. So it is not possible in these countries to stimulate investment by reducing interest rate further, because such economies are in a situation of liquidity drop. Liquidity drop is characterized by perfectly elastic demand for money. That is, demand for money is infinitely elastic. When that point is reached, we will say that demand for money is perfectly elastic and monetary policy become ineffective. So this is one effect, the result of a change in the supply of money. Now we consider one more, that is a change in the level of income. Remember this, in our earlier graph, this is money demand, this was money supply, and this is equilibrium rate of interest. This was drawn for a particular level of income, y is equal to y0. And we know that if the money supply increases to MS2, rate of interest decreases from R1 to say R2. Now we consider another change. Suppose that the level of income increases. An increase in the level of income is shown as an upward shift. As I told you, the vertical shift, like this. The vertical shift. Level of increase in the level of income is shown as a vertical shift. Now, as you can see, equilibrium requires that interest rate increases to R2. That is, equality between demand for money and supply of money is re-established only at a rate of interest equal to 8%, not at 10%. And let me rewrite this slightly. MS2. Now, if equilibrium is required at R1, money supply must increase. Otherwise, equilibrium occurs only at a higher interest rate. Now the question is, why equilibrium in the money market is restored only at a higher interest rate when there is an increase in income? The reason is, when the income increases, transaction demand for money increases. And with the increase in the transaction demand, with the money supply held constant, people will be forced to sell their bonds to obtain money. So supply of bond increases relative to the demand for bonds. That means there is a reduction in the price of bonds and an increase in the rate of interest. So if there is an increase in the level of income with no accompanying change in what is known as supply of money, only rate of interest will increase to restore equilibrium in the money market. On the other hand, if the monetary authorities increases the money supply, when the level of income increases, rate of interest will remain constant at R1. So the equilibrium level of interest in the Keynesian model is determined by demand for money and supply of money. So interest rate is a monetary phenomenon. That is one point. And demand for money is divided into three motives. And the novelty of the Keynesian theory is he introduced the speculative demand for money, and it is a breakaway from the classical quantity theory of money. That is all about Keynesian theory of demand for money and interest rate determination.